and a brofist to you all, and why Warhammer Summer is here, my friends. The promised land has arrived, a little earlier than expected for me anyway. What is Warhammer Summer? I discovered 40k during our subathon in December when we were rebuilding this place, and Warhammer was something, I'll be honest, as geeky as I am, right? As geeky as I am. Whenever I saw Warhammer as a kid, I was like, that's the super nerds, right? There are tiers of nerddom, and I was into the cool stuff, like professional wrestling, and N64s, and Mario, and GoldenEye, and all that kind of stuff. But the Warhammer stuff was like a different beast completely, and I stayed away from it. And I regret that a lot, because the way this whole thing came about, short story, is while I was in Sweden at the Race to World First, and I was casting, and I was streaming there as well, is a sponsorship deal came in. And the way we do any gaming sponsorship is Nupss, our business manager, will present to me like, hey, all these games, would like you to check them out. And we go through them all, and I'm like, that one looks like a game I would play. That's fine, right? Anything that's like, I would never play this game. We don't touch it. And I don't touch, we have a basic rule. I will not play any game, like a sponsorship, that is a game I would not let my kids play. And that counters out a lot of gacha games and things like that. We do always say, if they like rocked up with like $1 million, yeah, I mean, everybody would know, get that bag, baby. Screw it. The morals, flexibility there, but that's never happened. So we're all good. So one came across, which was Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. And Nupss was like, it's like Baldur's Gate 3, but it's in the Warhammer universe. And I was like, oh, I like those kind of games. That looks kind of fun. So we'll check it out. And it was only a 2-hour stream, right? That's usually a typical sponsorship. And so I played it, and within like an hour, I'm like, what is this story? What is this world? Like, it's really dark, it's macabre, it's twisted, it's evil, but it's kind of brutal and epic at the same time. I was like, what is going on? And as it turned out, we have some massive Warhammer fans in the audience who are like, yeah, this is Warhammer 40k. And it basically, obviously, if you've been a long-time fan, you'll be very aware of how much, like, my favorite games are dark, macabre, and twisted games. Like, I always say, like, pretty much my favorite game of all time, and I can show you that I literally have it on display, it's actually over there right now, is Bloodborne. I love that Lovecraftian style of the really twisted stuff. I love that. So I was like, this is like everything I love. And like, yeah, it's 40k. I was like, I don't even know what 40k is. And so I went and found this like fresh fandom for me to enjoy of learning about 40k, watching a lot of videos from some excellent YouTubers who we reached out to, and they were like, yeah, you can watch our videos. And we had a nightly thing during the subathon of grabbing a few beers and learning about the Emperor, and the Emperor now has a place. The Emperor of Man now sits aside. But now we said, right, we'll play Warhammer Summer, where we'll go through the best games. So what we did is we sat down with the audience, and we went through every Warhammer 40k game on Steam and assessed it with a ranking based on, so I'm spoiler free. It was like S to C of like some of the very hit and miss. And we came up with a good list of S ranks. And then they were like, these two should be your starters. So that's where we are at. That's what we're doing. And the game that everyone was like, you have to start with this one. It is the one to get going with, was Space Marine. So I started with Space Marine Anniversary Edition. Killing orcs. I love the orcs. I feel I'm an orc. You see, we've got the wonderful displays on the wall of the Orc War boss, because I love the Orc War bosses. I feel like at PreachCon we're having everybody make their own Warhammer model for a diorama we're making, and I want to be a big Orc War boss. By the by, let's start off with Warhammer Space Marine, and my god, you know, I'm a pretty good historian of video games for the most part, but obviously it's a very huge genre. And I don't know everything, and I never would pretend to, right? In my niche, I know a lot, but when you learn more, you're like, oh my god. And playing this game, I was like, oh my god, this is Doom 2016. There is more inspiration here for Doom 2016 than I've seen ever in the Doom games themselves. Like, it's absolutely that. This is the beginnings of that kind of games. And the ideas and creativity that went into here clearly influenced those guys massively into how you should play that game. And Doom 2016, if you recall when it came out, people were like, oh my god, this is so awesome, because the more aggressive you are, similar to Bloodborne, the more it pays off. You need more ammo? Well, do this. You need to heal? Well, you don't like run off and heal like you would do in Halo, you know, get shelter, wait for your shields to regen and all that. No, you murder more. You execute people. You stamp on their freaking heads. You crush them into the ground. You stick your axe into their face, and that will heal you. That's all here. It's all here. They just didn't figure a way of doing ammo. So they just left crates everywhere, so you don't never run out of ammo. And I was like, oh my god, the inspiration through the ages that seemingly began here is so evident to me now. So what is Space Marine? You obviously are a Space Marine. You're Captain Titus, who's a badass. I'm hoping to hit a game where I can play as another faction, because I do find the Space Marines a little goody two-shoes, although they're not. Warhammer is grimdark. But they're like, you know, I want to play the Orcs. They're funny. They're more interesting. Every story I've heard of the Orc lore makes me laugh. I want to play all the others, the Eldar and things like that, the Necrons. I want to learn more, because I'm using Warhammer Summer as a way of upping and ingraining knowledge, because there's a lot to take in, right? There's a hell of a lot of names and nomenclature, and this faction leads to this faction, and then you've got Nurgle coming in, and then you've got Kharn coming in, and all these names, and you're like, okay, I need to order this, and the only way to do that is to sort of immerse yourself, so I'm hoping the games do that. But one thing I will say about Space Marine, for anybody who's never played this game, one, it's not cheap right now, but you can wait for deals, and then it's super cheap. It's because it's 2011 it came out. First of all, the graphics hold up massively. It still looks fantastic, right? A lot of work being done by modern processors and GPUs, but it looks great. It looks fantastic. Absolutely no issues. Before I played, I did check Nexus mods to see, wait, maybe I need a graphics overhaul like I would do with, say, Fallout 3 when we played that, just to make it a bit prettier for stream and for your eyeballs. But it didn't need it. It was totally fine. It ran perfectly smooth. It was excellent. It looks... There's so much care and attention to detail. In the first 5 minutes, there's a huge mega cannon going off, and you can just see these shockwaves blasting across the landscape. And then you can see, like, even though they're not relevant, is orcs and things running around in the background, just doing little things. And that's love and detail, and not just move through this area. So good. Next thing, brutal. Absolutely brutal. Like, it really showcases the strength and power of the Space Marines, in this case the Ultramarines, in that you are just a walking Leviathan of death. That's what you are. You are literally death incarnate that arrives on this world, and it's 1,000 orcs for every Space Marine to try and bring them down and crush you into the floor. And you just... One of the things that I really enjoyed about this game is the gameplay, which is a fine line for them to walk. And I have been told that in like the highest difficulty setting this is a bit less prevalent. But obviously they designed the game with like the normal mode in mind. Is that you could be blasting with your gun. You could be shredding things with a bolt gun, but they send wave after wave after you, and then you can resort to melee, and you really get that feel of a warrior on the battlefield who's like shredding this oncoming storm, and then you resort to just cutting your way through them to thin their numbers. And that works incredibly well in this game, because you are able to, as I said earlier, stun them with melee combos and then execute them and rip them apart and heal yourself up and keep fighting all the way through it. And you get that good feel that they were clearly going for, of this just overwhelming odds, and you are just battling through it, and you are relentless and you are unstoppable. And I love that. I think they nailed it. I think they absolutely nailed it to get that impression of the game. The next great thing about this, as we played through it, was the constant stream of just ever increasingly good upgrades that just seemingly just increase your power level exponentially. Not only was it new guns, so there's a railgun equivalent, and I know people get pissed that I call it the railgun because it's called a las cannon in Warhammer 40K, but it works similar to what a railgun would be in Quake or Doom when I played those games. And then you get a sniper rifle, you get a quality bolter with exploding rounds that set things off, and plasma cannons, and it's like upgrade. And then they very quickly, after giving you this, like, choose your favorite. You can only have 4 weapons, but they're like, take your favorite loadout. It's fine. All the weapons work. Yeah, you might be... If you would have brought the other weapon, maybe the section would have been slightly easier, but it doesn't really matter. You can play whatever you want. You can fight whatever you want to do. We're just giving you more options. And similar with the melee weapons, from shredding cannons, shredding, you immediately get a chainsaw, and then you can upgrade that to, obviously, like another big power axe, and then you can change that into the Mega Thor Hammer, which I loved, but the Thor Hammer is so strong, it limits you to 2 weapons at the time. But when you combo that with, then it gives you a jetpack, so you can leap into the sky and slam down and crush everybody with Thor's Hammer and then crash into it. And then it's like, and also we're going to give you a Berserk mode. Again, something you'd see in Doom. If you played Doom, the modern Dooms, you'll know you get that Berserk mode where you just run around and punch things to death. that came from Space Marine. It's in Space Marine. Lots of games have had a similar thing, but the way it interacts in the gameplay-wise, it's straight lifted from there. It's just like, right, just go crazy for the Emperor. The Emperor blesses you, crush everything in sight and destroy it. Let's go to the lore. So, they've done a good job here with Space Marine, and for anybody who's listening to this who hasn't done even like a moderate delve into the 40k universe, you really don't need it. I was surprised by that, is that how they tell you enough so you understand what's going on. Like, if you knew nothing about Warhammer 40k at all, you can tell just by the look of a Space Marine, you're a big armored walking tank. And then it gives you mega weapons to go with it, and you're fighting just endless streams of hordes of orcs. All basic stuff from any video game, and you're fine. And then when it does have the stuff that's like, oh, if you're in the know about 40k and Warhammer, this would make more sense to you. It doesn't deviate that experience at all. So when like another chapter of the Marines show up, like the Blood Ravens, you're just like, oh, cool. These are a different type of Space Marine because they're wearing different armor, but I know what Space Marines are. This is fine. But if you're a 40k fan, you're like, oh, the Blood Ravens are here. Sick. I know all about the history of them. And the same with Chaos. They just mention, oh, they come from another place. They mention the warp, but you can just read that as the power source, right? So, although a guy is called an Inquisitor, who's one of the main dudes, one of the main obvious bad guys from the very beginning, he's Mr. I'm definitely not evil. The way that Captain Titus interacts with him, even... I thought this was really well done in the storytelling, is clearly this guy is bad, right? And he's telling you to do things which put your life in jeopardy, but the storytelling is done in such a way, in the way Captain Titus just accepts it and says, yes, Inquisitor. Yes, we will move forward. Is that you understand the hierarchy, is that the Inquisitor is above you, and you're a soldier. You do as told. Even if there's quite a little interesting early part of the game where I'm going to get his name wrong because I kept calling him Leonardo and Leonidas. Leandros, I believe he's called. Who's like a rookie. And it's Captain Titus tells him, like, yes, you should follow scripture and you should follow the orders of the Emperor. But also thinking for yourself is very important. It's very important that you do that. However, you see Captain Titus when it's like dealing with an Inquisitor and putting himself in a dangerous situation, as he does see himself as the soldier on the battlefield, and he should follow the orders because an Inquisitor, who is a very powerful psychic, would not be trying to lead the Space Marines astray, although the Inquisitor obviously sees them as grunts, essentially, like they're cannon fodder to be killed. And yes, an Inquisitor would not go into the Chamber of Death, but he would send a Space Marine into there, and that is your duty, and he must go with it. I loved all this stuff. I loved the betrayal of the Chaos with the Inquisitor. It was very obvious it was coming, but like it was still nice as well to see the Chaos Space Marines looking absolutely terrifying, coming out and being, especially for 2011, looking fantastic, like really sticking to the grossness of a lot of the body modification that happens in the Warhammer universe. But then the rookie, who is more by the book, you know, he's green, coming fresh out of Space Marine camp, where he's been indoctrinated hardcore with the teachings of the Emperor, or whatever the Imperium is putting onto him, is like, wait a minute. Maybe you're influenced by chaos, right? I smell chaos everywhere, because how are you resistant to this? How are you're sus. So I have no doubt there's going to be some sort of payoff with that later in the game. We're pretty deep into the game. I get the feeling I'm actually near the end, as we have we've quashed the orc threat, which ended in a moderate boss fight. And I think this is testament to the game, is their boss fights aren't great. And they weren't in 2011. If you weren't around at the time, and you think of a lot of the games, for those of us who were around and gaming, you know, pretty hardcore at the time, you will know that shooter FPS games, boss battles, were never really the strong point. They really weren't. And that comes all the way from the era of, like, Quake and Duke Nukem and all those kind of games. Really hadn't figured out how to do good FPS boss fights that weren't just bullet sponges. And essentially they would have rockets and stuff. They're not even that amazing now. Like, I think the modern day Dooms have done a reasonably good job with the cyber demons being able to dodge around and the way the spider masterminds work and stuff like that. Destiny has definitely done the best job, but it's put in like MMO mechanics, right, with multiplayer, which you can't really do in a single player FPS games. And that shows here. So they just didn't do that many of them. Good. It's not our strong point. Our strong point is you fighting countless hordes. That's our strong point. So we will have a boss fight because you kind of have to. But I've done one. Everything else has been like mini bosses that you'll generally meet as trash pretty quickly after you fight one of them. And they're funny, like, you know, the raging wog of the orcs in the mini bosses. But they will go down in a few hits. That's it. In terms of actual straight up boss fights, I've done one. And I feel like I'm near the end of the game. And it was against the big orc war boss to dispense the orc threat. And it's not amazing. It's dodge out of the way of a charging boss and shoot lots. That's it. So they just didn't do a lot of them. Good job. Hide your weaknesses, enhance your strengths. It's such a good motto to have, and they clearly followed that here. They knew they couldn't pull off mega cool boss fights, so don't have a lot of them. Simple as that. If we have some great ideas, and I assume we might see this in the last boss, another great example of this is actually BioShock. BioShock knew it as well. Like, infamously, the final boss of BioShock 1 is terrible. It's awful. It's really, really bad. But the strength of that game came from fighting the big daddies and the ominous way they're just walking around you. And you can do setup, you can set up traps, and you can actually kill them in a couple of seconds if you have the proper resources. Cool. This good fun element of the boss fight without actually fighting the boss, which is setting up and then it going wrong. Right? And many of us who've played BioShock 1 have done a really great setup to engage a big daddy, and it's just gone wrong because he's gone a different direction or something. Same with the big sisters in BioShock 2. Great, but if it goes right, you kill them really quickly, and you're like, cool, I racked up another one. Excellent. But the actual one-on-one big boss fights, let's put them to the side because they're going to suck, because ultimately it's about how much damage can you do. That's it. So I really appreciate that. Right now, I'm overwhelmingly happy with the start of Warhammer Summer. I think Space Marine is a game that you can pick up and play now. I don't think it's very long. I could be wrong. Lots of games have taken a twist, like when it feels near the end of the story, and then it twists into something else. That might happen. I don't think they're going to make that play for a 2011 game. I think they're going to keep it in a way I miss. I know this is nostalgia talking, but in a way I miss, which is don't outstay your welcome. It can get old, right? Murdering hordes and hordes of enemies, for me and for a lot of players, can get old, right? Unless you've got some sort of infinite progression system like you'd see in a Path of Exile, it feels a bit like Dynasty Warriors outstays its welcome for me. Like, after a couple of hours, I'm like, I'm kind of done with this murdering thousands of people. I just get chasing unlocks and stuff. Like, I'm not that interested in that anymore because the gameplay's just not that exciting for me. I think this is going to go that way. It's like, we know where we're great. We could do some really great, amazing pieces of work with this. But if we go past like 10, 12 hours, we'll run into what I call the Alien Isolation problem. And people get angry at that because they love Alien Isolation. But for me, that game is about 7 hours too long. Once you can deal with the alien, then that fear goes away. I know that's subjective because some people are terrified of the alien all the way up until the end of the game, but I think Alien Isolation was like 20 hours long or something like that. I'm actually going to check for you right now. I'm in front of my PC, and I believe I played it on Steam. Alien Isolation, yeah. Okay, Alien Isolation I completed in 16 hours. I'd still say that game is about 7 hours too long. I think if that game would have been 9 to 10 hours... I think they would have had a better game than what they got, because I know after about 5 hours, the alien was nothing to me anymore, and it outstayed its welcome. Back then, a lot of games just didn't do that. They didn't need to get these, like, engagement metrics, right, and try and keep people around for microtransactions and things like that, so they needed this enormous game for people to invest in. And I looked at games like Assassin's Creed, I think it was Valhalla, where I played for, like, 16 hours, and it was still the tutorial zone. And then the game opened up. I'm like, bro, really? And that's like, it's kind of daunting, right? It's kind of daunting to have to feel like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm not sure I want to do this same thing again for maybe 7 or 8 times. Especially in an era now where we're not looking for one game to sustain us for 6 months. At least most of us have access to £2 and £3 games, which come with, you know, you can pick up Faster Than Light for fucking £4 and you get 300 hours out of it if you want it, while also playing some AAA games on the side. Or you can get your Path of Exiles for free and just play them. Or you can get Final Fantasy XIV for free and play for like 500-600 hours. When you're in that world of competition, which didn't exist in 2011, then it changes the game. You just want a good, solid game that people are going to buy and have a great time with, and then put a robust multiplayer on top of it. Nothing but praise for this game. Nothing but praise. I see very, very little fault other than very early I'm playing with keyboard and mouse. Controller probably would have been better, but I'd played the first 10 minutes and got used to keyboard and mouse, and I went with it. And other people are like, it's better on controller. Sure, play with a controller if you want, but I played the entire game with keyboard and mouse. I haven't finished it yet, but we'll wrap up there. Absolutely solid start. Lots of discussion, and I love playing these older games where you see the origins of great ideas, and the sadness as well that a lot of these ideas were benched or shelved, even though they clearly worked and were clearly great, probably because 2010 to 2020 was the era of we need people playing our game all the goddamn time to feed them season passes, to feed them microtransactions. It's that era where the industry changed. And looking back at these, like, just robust, super solid games, even though it's a little earlier, your Half-Lives and things like that were just, like, solid experience, decent multiplayer, GG's. Fantastic. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow for probably the finale or not. I don't know. Maybe we're going to fight the Eldar or something. I don't know. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.